Hey, this is Amy with Flower Moxie, and I wanted to make a video on some troubleshooting tips for when you're working with your flowers. We're going to talk about if a flower isn't opening fast enough, if it's open too quickly, if it's not quite the right shade that you were hoping for, or if maybe something fell out of the bucket and now it got dehydrated and it looks sad. But before we start into those, I want you to know that if anything looks rough, if anything is like struggling, or if you feel like a flower is dying, then take pictures and send it immediately, because we'll absolutely send replacements or issue a refund for that. So let's start with, let's say that you have ranunculus, anemones, peonies, roses, and they're just not opening fast enough for you. So here's the difference between event florals and doing flowers for like Mother's Day and birthday arrangements. The goal with those are always to make them last like a long time, a week and a half. When it's event florals, you want flowers to open to their max capacity. And the secret about flowers is they look the best right before they die. So with me, I'm always trying to expedite that process, because my goal is to have those flowers look the best on that Saturday night wedding. My goal is not to make them last until the next Wednesday. So when it comes to getting my flowers to open, if I feel like the roses are tight and they're just not blowing out the way I want, I will give them a fresh cut. So you always want to cut them again, cut them at an angle, put them in some warm water, and set them in a sunny spot. And I've even been known to like put my roses outside plenty. I usually start in 30-minute increments. Now, if it's like super, super hot in the middle of summer, I would suggest putting them in the shade, not in like 100-degree temperature in the sun. But like in the fall and the spring, when the temperatures are pretty mild, that wind and that sunlight helps open those roses. So usually I pop them out there off the studio's patio for just a few hours. I do that with ranunculus, anemones, peonies, if I feel like they're not opening quick enough. But I probably wouldn't do that on a Wednesday. I would wait until like Thursday. If you notice that they're looking tight on Wednesday night and they haven't really opened, maybe try that technique Thursday morning. This is for like a Saturday wedding. Another technique that you can use is the blow dryer technique. So you want to turn off the heating element. Like, you don't want to blast them with like that crazy heat that we direct at our heads, but you want that air to try to push those petals open, and you don't want to use your hands. And the reason being is you can bruise, you can tear the petals, and then the oils on your hands can cause them to brown. So you can blow into it manually, but sometimes like when you have one bunch of roses, it's easier just to use a blow dryer to just push oxygen and air down into that bud so it starts opening for you. Sometimes if roses feel soft enough to me, I'll reflex them. That's where I pop the petals inside out, and that just makes it look really, really huge, and I love the look of that. So I think we covered what to do if it's not opening fast enough. Let's talk about if you get your flowers in on Wednesday for a Saturday wedding and you feel like your spray roses opened up way too quickly, or your peonies just blew out, or your anemones are already just really big and open and you're afraid that they're not going to last. So my number one suggestion is just to put them in the coldest part of your house in a darker room. You don't want them up against a window. A lot of times, like with roses, spray roses, they'll be completely fine. Now, anemones and peonies, I would say that they have a shorter vase life. And I don't know, I feel very on the fence about suggesting to put them in the refrigerator, but it can be done. So just last week I got some anemones and they were just open on the first day, and I was afraid that they wouldn't look good for the Saturday wedding. So I put them in the refrigerator. I put it on the warmest setting. I sealed up all fruits and vegetables so the gas that they release wouldn't damage the blooms. And they held up just fine. And you can do that with peonies, because peonies are really bad about and good about opening quickly. Sometimes you just want to extend their vase life, and putting them in the fridge will do that. Now, when you put them in the fridge, don't push them in the back, because that's usually the coldest, and make sure that they're not touching the walls of the refrigerator, because that can cause the petals to bruise or brown. Let's talk about if it's not the right shade. So we talk about shade variation on the website, and usually My most inconsistent flowers are typically the most expensive, like peonies, burgundy ones. They tend to be inconsistent. Sometimes they come in and they lean a bit red, or they'll come in and they lean a bit fuchsia. I always suggest having a Canna Design Master on hand. And I talk about that, and it's on the website, and it's very product specific. So you're not going to run into that problem with like filler flowers and volume flowers. They're usually typically consistent. Usually it's the pricier ones. Pink ranunculus, sometimes they come in like really, really blushy, and sometimes they come in to be like a pretty strong light pink. If you know that in advance, which we tell you on our website, that way you can be prepared and have a Canna Design Master. Every florist has it because when you're depending on Mother Nature, it produces different colors throughout the year based on the sunlight, based on the pH of the soil. So I can order burgundy peonies and then they come in a bit fuchsia just because the soil was more acidic. And that's a perfect scenario for me to get out my Canna Design Master. I lightly mist it with some burgundy spray paint from that Design Master, and it calms down that fuchsia and it looks perfect to put in the bridal bouquet. So Michael's and Hobby Lobby sells Design Master. You can get it on Amazon, and probably the two most popular sellers would be blush and it would be burgundy. Everything else is pretty consistent in color. It's just those two shades tend to sometimes be hard to come by. So in a pinch, and I'm going to say in a pinch, this is not my number one recommendation. I have used regular spray paint on a flower before. Maybe some floral purists are just dying right now by hearing that, but it doesn't kill the flower. Design Master is definitely not a natural product. It's a total spray paint. It's smelly. You got to spray it outside. The one thing about Design Master that makes it great for fresh flowers is it's extremely quick drying. And so I will spray it. It can sit outside for like 2 minutes. It will be completely dry and you can bring it back inside. Regular spray paint, it's just thicker, it's stickier. Just because I wanted to test it out, I've tried it on roses, carnations, and ranunculus. So I tried it on 3 different types of flowers. I found that it took several hours for it to dry. It was like tacky and kind of sticky, and the flowers still lasted 3 days. So my experience was that regular spray paint did not just kill the flower. Definitely not my number one recommendation. But if you find yourself in this pinch, or let's say you're wanting to spray out some greenery to be like burgundy or whatever color, you can always turn to Lowe's. Greenery will paint out a lot better, I think, than flowers. But it is something that you can do if you find yourself in that position. Let's say that a flower falls out of the bucket, like hydrangeas are real top heavy. So some days I've come in and they've kind of lifted out of the water line and they've wilted. A way to revive that is give that flower a really deep cut, meaning cut 3 to 5 inches off, because that stem has dried out. And if you recut it and hydrate it in fresh water, more than likely it will bounce back. Queen Anne's lace is really, I feel like it's famous for all of a sudden wilting on me, and I'll cut like 3 to 5 inches off and it will perk up within a day. So a lot of flowers will revive, but you have to cut that dry stem off and give it the best chance it can to perk back up. If you have any questions, any concerns, or if you want to ask about a flower that we've talked, maybe it being temperamental, or if you're just worried, shoot us an email. That's what we're here for. We're here to answer your questions. And thank you so much.